All right, so forgive the little selfie mode video intro here, but this episode marks our inaugural video episode, which we're excited to release. I don't know if we're going to do it on every single episode going forward, but on a lot we will. So special episode in that sense, and also in the sense that this episode is reflecting our first Innovators Series episode, where I'm going to be featuring some people who are putting out into the world not just good work, but really valuable ideas. And we have a phenomenal guest today who is putting out some extremely useful, beneficial, and inspiring ideas. A guy by the name of Tunnell, who has he's actually blown up on social media. This guy has a big following already. His company is called Building Culture out of the Oklahoma City area. And I'm not going to tell you too much about him in this introduction, because I think the right thing for you to do if you're going to invest, 30, 40 minutes in this episode is going to be to first go to his website and his company, buildingculture.com, I believe, and search him up, read a little bit about what he and his company are doing, go look at some of his posts online. Go about it that way. And the reason why is because that's exactly how I found Austin and why I got so excited to interview him. So I'd love for you to be able to have the same experience in terms of getting to know a little bit. And I think it's going to make this experience of listening to what he has to say so much more rich. And that it'll be because this guy is doing some incredible things. He's got a project in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is suburbs of Oklahoma City. And that project was what I came across online. I come across thousands of different builders and projects every day online in the publications. This was one of the very few that caught my eye from the get-go as something that, for many reasons, is going to be a beautiful, transformative project. I think both for his company, for the community, and hopefully for a larger model that he's aspiring to create and put out into the world. So anyway, that's enough. I'll leave it at that, and really excited for you guys to check this episode out. Well, man, let's start with this. So I came across your deal, the Townsend, just a few weeks ago. I don't know how exactly I found it, but one way or another, came across it. You got a good following on Twitter, by the way, so congrats on that.
Thanks.
I think that's probably symbolic of the fact that you're doing some cool stuff, which is obviously why I want to talk to you today. But I want to get into the Townsend. I want to talk about a bunch of stuff. Let's just start with kind of like an overview of Building Culture, your company, kind of what y'all are all about, so we can kind of set the tone from there.
Yeah, great. Building Culture, I started it 8 years ago, and I started it after apprenticing for 2 years with a master mason and timber framer. So I really learned traditional masonry and timber framing, and then we were also putting roofs on and everything. So I kind of learned the whole gamut of construction, at least as much as you can learn in 2 years. And I ended up teaching myself design on the side out of desperation, really, because I needed to be able to make a living and build what I knew how to build. And so I started just designing in SketchUp and looking at buildings I found beautiful, and turned out I could design, which I didn't know that. If you had told me that before that, I would have thought you were insane, because I didn't even know how to draw before that. So started that after the apprenticeship of 2 years, started Building Culture and doing design build, and ultimately always wanted to make it into real estate development, because, real estate developers are really what control projects and what actually happens, and wanted to be able to create this kind of vertically integrated development company that could do development, architecture, and construction. And so that's what I've been growing it into over the past 8 years, and been in this business for 10 years now, and I made a lot of progress in that area. We're now a licensed architecture company and do some master planning for walkable neighborhoods, and now we're really focused on doing development projects. And we've had some small developments before, but this with Townsend is our biggest syndication, as we were just talking about right before we hit record. That it's going to be really, really exciting. So,
yeah. Well, one of the things that I thought was really interesting when I was reading your bio, um, you're an accountant by trade. All right.
Recovering. Yeah.
Yeah, recovering.
Yeah. No,
Recovering accountant.
I started at KPMG in 2011 because my dad was an accountant. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so just kind of, I learned very quickly I did not want to do that. So within 15 months, I was gone and I quit and I'd moved to Panama and I ended up in the Peace Corps for 2 years. And it was kind of a long, winding path to find where I am. But I'll just tell you kind of two quick anecdotes. During that time when I was traveling a little bit, I ended up in Spain and Italy and Portugal for a bit. And I hadn't traveled a whole lot. And I grew up in the suburbs of Houston. And when you grow up in the U.S. in the 21st century, you're kind of taught like, hey, we live at the greatest moment in all history. We're so smart. We're so technologically advanced. We have iPods and iPhones and computers and internet, and we can launch rockets into space and all these amazing things that are absolutely true. But when you go walk around some of these places that were built 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, you can very quickly recognize, holy crap, we've lost some things. And so that was kind of the first taking the blindfold off for me of going, I don't know what the language is. I don't even know back then, I didn't know what a hip roof was or a dormer was. But walking around these places and seeing what people have built historically, the beauty, the lifestyle it enables, just this like holistic lifestyle and really starting to see our built environment as the human habitat, which we don't think about anymore. We just think about individual ingredients. And I think about cities and towns and neighborhoods as a recipe. And we just really pay attention to ingredients, the buildings themselves, as if they stand individually. But the greatest cities of all of human history, they really treat them as these holistic, living and breathing, complex organisms where the buildings are really shaping the city. They're shaping the space. They're shaping the civic and the public realm. And the built environment has effects like we just think, oh, built environment, that sounds boring. But it's like it affects our communities, our culture, our health, our well-being, the environment. There's economic implications. I mean, it is so critically important, the built environment, that we just don't really talk about. And so it's something I'm just incredibly passionate about. What I would say is restoring the human habitat into something that is life-giving and human-centric.
One of the things that I appreciate that I think you're really pushing the envelope with is you're advancing the conversation both in terms of kind of urban development and design and also kind of like sustainable. You got this interesting pitch in your deck about what is it exactly, buildings that like not buildings that will last, but buildings that you want to own for a long time, real estate you want to own for a long time. What's that gap in the market that you feel like you are filling?
I really, in many ways, particularly in the US, we live in a pretty disposable culture of cheap goods and cheap consumerism. And that's not to say I like being able to buy things. I like being able to get a cheap Halloween costume for my kids that doesn't cost me a fortune. So I do not mean I don't like the incredible economy that we have, but there's so much value. You know, if you just look at human happiness and human health and community well-being and connection and meaning, those are all going downhill right now. Yet we're the wealthiest, most technologically advanced society in history. And I just forgot your question. Will you? I started going down a path.
Yeah. So no, that's a good path
In the deck. Yeah.
Like, what's the gap that you guys are looking to fill? And like, kind of, I guess another way for me to word that question is like, how would you like for your company to advance the conversation? Because you're an idealist, which I really, I appreciate. I like to think I am too. So how do you want your company to advance the conversation?
Yeah. So I think kind of like culture, I think architecture is a reflection of culture, and that's why I started there. And I think so much of what we build is disposable. And that's not just I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean that very literally. Most buildings we build will end up in a landfill in 50, 75 years or something. And because we're such short-term thinkers, we think 50 years is a long time. That's not a long time. That's not a long time at all. And when you think about some of the issues of whether it's affordable housing, community identity, building disposable buildings, we can never get ahead on affordable housing because we're always having to rebuild things. There's no cultural connection between generations that gets passed down. There's a reason that the old downtowns and the old warehouses and the old coffee shops are the most expensive and popular places in modern US culture. There's a reason that people spend billions of dollars to go visit Savannah or Charleston or Italy for a week. And then we come back and kind of accept the world as it is. So what I hope that we are contributing to the conversation is thinking about our buildings not as just disposable consumerist goods, but things that we want to invest in that reflect our values as a culture. And then those values that we kind of are manifested in physical form reflect back to us and shape us and for generations to come. And that we today, right now, we're really building a bunch of liabilities for future generations, whether you're looking at infrastructure or the buildings that we are creating. So when you think, we were talking about, you've got kids, I've got kids, we've got $37 trillion of debt, we've got affordability crisis, we've got economic issues, we have environmental issues, things like that. And I want to leave the world better than we found it. And there's this movement that says humans are destructive. And the environmental movement has really gone this direction where it's humans are just bad and humans are destructive. We just need less humans and less blah, blah. It's like, no, that is not the case. Some of the most beautiful, wonderful, sustainable places on Earth were cultivated by humans, whether that's urban cities or agriculture or forests that have even been maintained by humans can actually be the most beautiful forests anywhere. And so this idea that humans are destructive, I don't think is a helpful narrative. And so I want to reframe that narrative of we are meant to build beautiful things. We are meant to make the world better. And not only in doing so that we make the world better for the future, we make the world better for ourselves today just in the effort of doing it. Because I think people need meaning. And if you're just in the job or work for just money and that's all it is to you, I can just tell you right now, you're never going to be happy. I've never seen anyone be happy that's only about money. I think you have to have a deeper meaning to it. And so there's all these things kind of intertwined together where we want to create a more durable architecture and a more sustainable, beautiful, human-centric cities in general and inspire other people to do the same.
Have you ever read a book called The Timeless Way of Building?
Oh, man, that was one of the things that set me down this path. I will say I started with pattern language. I read that. Okay. It just blew my mind, so Christopher Alexander is a huge staple.
He's like a real estate.
You can see it right there, actually.
Yeah, you do have. I had it in my office, and then they stole it to go put it as staging in one of our houses. So
okay,
but
it's wonderful.
He's like an architectural philosopher, which I love. It's interesting how the more that I've gone through my career really at this point, like architecture and philosophy has a lot of common surface area. It's fascinating, really, and you're hitting on some of those points. It's very much about how we live. It's not just about the acute functionality of is a building pretty or is it useful or whatever. I mean, there's really a lot more that goes into how we live. And that's one of the things I love about Timeless Way of Building. The interesting thing is that we are in a society right now where you don't see beautiful buildings being constructed nearly as often as you would like, as I would like, really, as much as, anybody I think that understands what you've learned and what I've learned, we realize there is an innate utility and value to really amazing architecture, and that has to be factored into the calculus, and it's not. And the calculus really is very short-term thinking, right? In terms of, it's driven by the capital markets and what investors have to do to be incentivized to invest. I started off, actually, I studied as an accountant, started off in investment banking, so I understand that you have to, that's what greases the wheels. So we have to be cognizant of that. But I always think about how do you go about marrying up, the needs of capital, the needs of investors with these more idealistic approaches that I think really can help improve cities, improve the way we live, like what you're doing. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that you've hit on something that's really important. Like when I was looking through your deck for the Townsend, you set investors up for a longer term horizon. And that right there, having more patience in the investment and not really kind of having a gun to your head about having to deliver something so quickly, I think that actually takes a lot of the pressure off and allows you to build more beautiful buildings. Is that something that is that basically why you structure your deals like that?
I think if you are trying to hit an exit in 5 to 7 years so you can hit a 20% IRR, you are forced to value engineer your building to something that's not going to be very beautiful at 99% of the time. And IRR is so time sensitive, as it's like realizing, but also all these things that are predicting our IRRs, they're also just predicting them. And it's based on what the market conditions in 5 to 7 years are and what the interest rates and what cap rates will be. And the truth is you have no idea. And then the second piece of that is when all these IRRs that are hitting 20% plus, a lot of that's institutional money, and institutional money is endowments and pension funds that don't pay taxes. So these are pre-tax, IRR quotes that if, as you're syndicating as well from probably high net worth individuals and stuff, these people pay taxes. And so there's kind of there's the post-tax IRR for one, where when you hold long-term, there's all kinds of tax benefits to that. So it enables you to build something better. When you build something better in a growing location that's, I would call like a more walkable area, that doesn't necessarily have to be like a midtown or something like that. It can be with other different types of neighborhoods. But I think if you look across the country, walkable places are the most valuable real estate around. And they become more valuable the more walkability is added to them, as in supply and demand go together. So time, in many ways, is on your side, where you want more building, you want more development around when you're building good urban places, good walkable neighborhoods, and they'll also be the most valued over time. They might not be the most valued, 3 years from now or something, but in the long run, I think they are. And you can also reduce risk substantially by doing this. If you sell an asset and you pass all that profit through on your K1s, people have to pay taxes on it, or they try to do a 1031 exchange and get it placed in 6 months, and no one can make the best decisions and time everything perfectly with that. Versus if you hold and do a cash out refinance opportunistically when cap rates compress, you can't predict when that will be. You just wait for the timing. You can return investor capital tax free. So our thesis with Townsend is we've got some for sale project with our townhomes, but we'll be able to return the majority of investor capital in a few years. And then we get to hold the commercial piece. Essentially, I like to use the word indefinitely. I don't put that in the deck indefinitely because, you never know what might happen, but that's really the goal. You get your money back, and then there's no point in exiting after that because you're just getting cash flow, depreciation passed through. And is that huge amounts? No, but then you get these tranches of capital, these capital events over time. And then generationally, if people are really thinking generationally, and this is where real estate is a cool kind of generational asset that can be passed down, there's a step up in basis. If you die and pass it on to your kids and say it was $100,000 when you bought it and $1 million when you died, typically you would pay taxes on that gain when you're passing it on. In real estate, there's a step up in basis, so they don't pay taxes on any of that $900,000 gain. So I think when you pair generational wealth building with generational real estate is really where we can create that kind of better world that we all want to see.
Yeah. Well, we've alluded to Townsend a few times. I think it's worth talking about it because it's an amazing project. So I want to hear a little bit more. Like, what's your kind of high level overview of that property?
So Townsend is a 1 acre infill site in the Oklahoma City metro. A lot of people don't know Oklahoma City, but it's the 20th largest city in the US and one of the fastest growing. And Edmond, where this is a district, kind of like a wealthy district in the Oklahoma City metro. And we're building it right in this kind of like downtown area next to this amazing park. It's walkable to 35 plus restaurants and coffee shops and breweries. And we're building 20 for sale townhomes and 13,000 square feet of commercial space that will be operating as a modern workspace / co-working space. And there's multiple theses to what we're doing, and we're building it in stages to mitigate risk. The the townhomes, there are so many people, and I think you'll get this being in Texas. And we're doing some market rate stuff too. This one is not market rate. This is kind of pretty high end, but there's so many people that it's pretty common to live in 4,000, 4,500 square foot, 5,000 square foot houses in Oklahoma or Texas. But there's a lot of people when their kids move out of the house, they don't want that big house anymore. They don't want the big yard anymore. They want to downsize. But the moment they start looking at downsizing, everything is essentially builder grade. It's like vinyl windows, vinyl floor, stuff like that. And you're like, if you want a nice house that's under 2,500 square feet, it doesn't exist. But a lot of people, when you're just a couple, maybe you've got grandkids, 1,200 square feet to 2,500 square feet is plenty, especially if it's really well done, thoughtfully laid out, wonderful design, great details, in a great context, in a community with a real identity. And so part of what we do when we're doing infill is we call it like urban inner block infill, where these townhouses aren't just kind of like laid on a street and just looking at the street where you walk out the front door and you're on an urban street. We're organizing them kind of inward facing into courtyards and stuff because you can control the environment when you do that. So you walk out your front door and you're greeted by these wonderful gardens and courtyards, and there's some kind of complexity to the way you can wander through the space. And so we really, what I would say is, I know an acre doesn't sound like a lot, but we're creating a neighborhood within a larger neighborhood that's downtown Edmond. And then the co-working space we're extremely excited about because I think it's going to be the most beautiful office space in the country. I mean, it's just going to be utterly stunning. It's going to be incredible.
If it's anything like the renderings, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be so wonderful. And it's surrounding all these courtyards. And we're really targeting these 1 to 5 person. How big is your business? Like, how many people do you have?
We've got, I want to say, how many people do we have? I can't even count off the top of my head. I guess we've got 9, I think 9 here locally, and then we got a few down in Mexico and South America that
very cool,
work for me remotely down there, sourcing materials and things like that. We're primarily, I don't know how you guys are set up there, but we're primarily a subcontractor driven region down here in Austin, meaning basically the only people on staff are administrative and managerial. Everybody else that's swinging a hammer is typically subcontracted out.
That's how we're set up too. You know, we've got some punch guys and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so nine people is there. We have a few spaces in here, but really what we're targeting with is this 1 to 5 person business. And you might have 9 people now, but you can probably remember when you didn't have 9 people, when you were just on your own. Maybe you had a business partner at some point. Maybe you had a team of 3. Maybe you had an assistant. It's like, where is a good place to office? You can office from home, but then no one's together. There's distraction. There's kids around. It's isolating. Then you can go to a suburban office park or something and then still be isolated, and it's ugly and it's not fun. And yeah, maybe it's cheap, big space, but like, is that really what you're looking for? So we're targeting that like 1 to 5, 1 to 8 person team of whether you're a lawyer or an accountant or a wealth manager or an architect or a designer, you know, those things where at every stage in my kind of career, I've worked out of a corporate office at KPMG. I've been a solo business owner. I've had a partner. Then I operate a small team now. And at every stage, I've never had an actual office space that was helpful and supported the way I wanted to work. And then also to be around other small business owners. I mean, it's so hard to run a small business because, you know, you're a builder, but guess what? You also have to be an expert in insurance and taxes and design and HR and all these other things that you don't really have the capacity to do that. But every small business is in that situation. And so I think there's tremendous opportunities not to like create some like, oh, we're just, everyone's running serious businesses. They got to go about their life. But I think we can create curated events and resources to facilitate small businesses and just help everyone's small business do better. Like when I was hiring my first virtual assistant, I was like, how do I do that? What do I have them do? How does that even work? You know, what does the job description look like? What did I do? I went and talked to small businesses. So part of the thesis here is 1, work out of the stunning space. 1, you can bring 2, you can bring clients there. 3, you're around 50 other small business owners and sharing resources and things like that. And it's walkable. So we're just really excited about the project between the townhomes, the co-working space and the commercial, holding it long-term. I really believe in the trajectory of downtown Edmond, of Oklahoma City in general. And so it's a really exciting project. It's really what I've been working towards for a decade now.
Yeah. Is there any capacity to hold the entire thing? I know the plan is to sell, and obviously that ship has sailed. Like I understand why you're doing it, but I also appreciate your idea of trying to hold as much real estate as possible. Are you not holding on to everything just because you got to get some return of capital to investors, basically? Or is there another like underlying reason to sell some of the assets? Because you're building such beautiful homes. Like for me, the ideal thing, and this is, I always go through this thought experiment of like, if whatever I'm doing right now, if there were zero constraints and I could do it exactly as I wanted, what would it look like? And for me, it's build beautiful structures and never let them go. Build them in good
Yeah.
areas that are going to be appreciated over the long term. Build durable structures like what you do, and never sell them. But unfortunately, there are constraints that you have to. So, like, what's your thinking behind selling some of the units and then keeping the rest?
I'm totally with you in terms of in my ideal world, I would probably do that even more. Although I like selling too, because I think when you're building a neighborhood, and when I say neighborhood, I mean, I don't just mean our 1 acre, I kind of mean this whole area. I think it's good to have owners and stuff too. So there's that where I'm not like like I want owners being able to really buy into an area. With this product, because the townhomes are pretty high end, I just don't think it works very well to rent them out. If I could be proven wrong and basically say we could rent these out to people that, you know what, they don't want to mess with home ownership. They're happy renting and paying kind of that premium rent. And I think the market is kind of heading that direction where there will be a place for that. And so I've got my eye on that, where maybe you make it really easy, all bills paid. Maybe there's some services that come along with it, cleaning every, week, where you start layering some services into this rental and you just pay a flat fee a month. I think that's really interesting. And I would like to explore and experiment with that. This is just the best way to manage risk because I can pre-sell the townhomes. We're building the
Yeah.
commercial first, which sounds odd, but we're building the commercial first so that because it doesn't really depend on the townhomes and it's just going to stand on its own. But then I can also use that to pre-sell townhomes so I don't
Yeah,
just go
makes
build
sense.
20 spec homes. I don't know about you. You've been a builder for a while. I've been, I've learned that no matter how great your product is, if you time the market wrong, you're not going to do well. The
Yeah.
market timing is just absolutely critical. And so that's why we're de-risking it by kind of slowing the process down a little bit and saying we're going to pre-sell 50% of the townhomes before we go build them, and we get to use our phase one to show them off and pre-sell and host events, and then people get
Yeah.
what we're doing. They're going, oh my gosh, now I see the level of quality, what these are going to be like. So that's one of the reasons we're doing it. But I absolutely also have interest in doing more of these developments, and they're all going to be different, where we are holding all of it, kind of indefinitely.
Yeah. Well, look, I think you've got a good point that you're making in terms of having owners in that neighborhood. There also is this current towards, especially in the younger generations of leasing, and what you're talking about in terms of removing some of the frictions for them, and possibly having some sort of like kind of premium rental offering seems like it could be of high value. But I completely get what you're doing. I mean, look, I'm in the for sale business too. I just,
Right.
you always look to how it's always greener on, the other pasture is always greener, and it's true. So I always think about, man, it'd be great to, hold on to some units that we build here or there. Um,
Absolutely. I
are
do
you going
think
to
you're
have,
right with younger generations too, which, probably means a different product type, but that we're interested in, we're actively pursuing right now is if you were to use investment speak, I'll call it a build to rent model, but like townhome
right,
pocket neighborhoods of more like market rate buildings where the exteriors are still like beautiful and they're conventional, they're wood frame, but wonderful brick, creating courtyards and stuff, and then more just builder grade kind of interiors. But I think
yep,
those could be some amazing. We can still do them quality and make it great, and I think those could be some really great products to hold long term. We're looking at things that are between an acre and 2 acres that you can do for 10 to $14 million or something, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there, not just in Oklahoma City, but in places like Austin too. I mean, Austin has just got so much going on. And as we were just talking about before the call, a lot of rules that are being changed that help facilitate better development and building that I think are pretty exciting.
yeah. The opportunity here within our state of Texas, and also like more regionally here in Austin, just after this last legislative session. It's a completely different environment. And so we need you, your next project after you get Townsend fully funded and going, you need to come down to Austin. We haven't really talked about that traditional masonry so much, like structural masonry. Is that something that is the DNA behind every single project you do, or is it just on certain projects?
You know, when you're in business long enough, you evolve to
Yeah.
reality. And so it was. And I've had to continually ask myself, it was until COVID, I'll put it that way. And then COVID, it cost me about 50% more to build today than it did pre-COVID. And
Okay.
that's really every builder I talk to, just around the country, volume builder, high-end builders. And so our structural masonry product is more expensive. But people could afford it back then. Now everything's so expensive, and we're still a premium on that for structural masonry. And so it's just a smaller and smaller segment that can afford it. And my overall priority, I really used to be stuck on building, 1,000-year houses was the idea. And it's not that I don't want to do that. It's that so many things have to change to be able to make that a real possibility, because I do believe in like a masonry based construction system. I could go a long tangent down that path, because it's just inherently more resilient to fire, to termites, to rot, to mold, to high wind. And people always bring up earthquakes, and it's like, yeah, that is its one weakness. Wood is weak in termites, rot, mold, wind, all these other things. So there is no perfect building system. You can build a very quality wood frame house, but by the time you build a really quality wood frame house, as you do, it's not that much different than the structural masonry, because it's expensive to build something quality. And just most of what's built is not actually quality, and it's not going to last. And so we've kind of had to evolve where we do both. We do structural masonry, and that's what we're doing, structural masonry on the product that we're going to keep indefinitely with our investors on the commercial space. And we think we can get kind of the rents to justify, because we've got all this exposed brick on the interior. It's just going to be amazing. And the townhomes, we're doing wood frame, but we're doing them very quality, and we're doing liquid flashing, and we're doing exterior insulation, and we're putting ERV systems in, and we're doing all these things that they're going to be wonderful townhouses. And the metaphor I would use is, if urbanism and all this is like recipe ingredients, buildings are the ingredients, urbanism is the recipe. Yes, you want both to be quality, but if you have to like choose one, I'm like, get the urbanism right, get the recipe right, and then do as best with the ingredients you can. And if those ingredients eventually need to be replaced one day, they can be replaced within the context of that recipe. Once you imprint a bad recipe, as in once you imprint suburban sprawl on an area with all the infrastructure, all the roads, all the it is so hard to repair. It is so hard to go backwards. So I'm like, get the recipe right, get the ingredients as good as you can. And we have to live in the world of reality of what's possible. So I really believe in the don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And just because I have a vision of I don't want to distill my vision. It's not that I'm going, oh, no, I don't believe in masonry anymore. It's just that I've got that vision, but if I want to get to that vision, I have to like figure out how to actually get there. And that really comes from, a lot has to change in the industry. A lot has to change in culture. A lot has to change with banking and appraisals and comps and labor and vendors and suppliers that are all focused on wood framing right now. So therefore, when you start doing something different, masonry, structural masonry is super niche. When you do something super niche, it's going to be more expensive. So I think it's really exciting as we have some of these new technologies, from 3D printing and robotics, and even, yes, AI and stuff like that, where you can take some of these masonry based construction systems. And I'm wondering if in the future we'll be able to start scaling them. So very much on my mind. It's something that we are always watching and working on, but it's kind of a lifelong process type thing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate what you're doing. One of my good buddies, who's an architect here in town, you'd like visiting with him. His name's Jared Haas. He's with Black Rabbit Studio, and in fact, I wanted him to be on this conversation with us, just because I think he'd have a lot to offer. But he's a big rammed earth
Oh yeah.
proponent,
Yeah.
but that's where there's this inherent conflict between what's practical,
Yeah.
which you've been discussing, and what would be ideal, which, taking soil that's local, that's there on site. I mean, talk about kind of the epitome of sustainability. That's it. And it's beautiful. It's something that could last for hundreds of years, but So I find that some of these ideas like that, like the structural masonry, I'm hoping that they get unlocked
Yep.
with some of the development of these new technologies. Like I know there are some soil block machines out there now
Yep.
that you can basically make your own bricks there, on site or very close by. Do you ever look at any of those?
Yeah, we never got too far down the rammed earth or even like the blocks you make on site because with bricks, you fire them and they're really hard. I think rammed earth absolutely has its place, and it's just not something we've really dove into. And it depends on the area. If you're in a super wet area, you probably don't want to do it, but in more arid climates and stuff, it can be a great idea. But I am excited that because a lot of this is culturally driven too, and we are really focused on sustainability in some regards, but it's a lot of ways in words only, or it's about tech or something like that, or just creating a low energy efficient house versus, the idea of solving energy or building things that last. I'm like, a sustainable house is a house that's 500 years old. That's my, so if you really took sustainability seriously, we would be focused on longevity of our buildings and human health, not just energy efficiency. I don't mean I don't care about energy efficiency. I just mean it's actually pretty low on my list of things that I'm really passionate about because we've kind of made efficiency like the why of building, and I'm really like human flourishing should be the why, human well-being, beauty, all of these things, human health, and then also energy efficiency, and we pack our houses with unbelievable amounts of toxic chemicals and VOCs, and you can't stay away from it. Even like you're trying to do healthy buildings, I'm trying to do healthy buildings, and we offer, VOC free paints, but they're more expensive. And, all these different products, your furniture has tons of VOCs. And I mean, we were looking at a well-constructed house from a good builder, 4 years old. And we had a mold inspector come in to just kind of check for stuff, even though it's only 4 years old. Mold's pretty big deal that's coming online that people don't really understand or think about, but it is a big deal. It's going to be a bigger deal. But his beeper started going off like crazy. I was like, uh-oh, what is that? He said, it's the VOC reader. I said, what is it? And I forget if it's parts per million or what, but he said, it's 10,000 parts per million. I said, what's recommended? He said, nothing over 1,000. And this is in a well-constructed house that's 4 years old, so it's had 4 years to off-gas. Now, to be fair, it had been sitting on the market for a couple months, so probably hadn't been in and out of and had a lot of stuff trapped in there. But that's without furniture in there. And those people are breathing that in. And so, once again, I care about that a lot more than I do about energy efficiency because those are just so much more critical to human well-being.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, we put it center stage, but really any sort of high quality construction should just naturally encompass wellness and sustainability and energy efficiency. Like that should almost be unspoken as not the center stage, but as just a component of any building that is constructed. I mean,
a more holistic approach, because right now the two things that people care about, price per foot, energy efficiency, like those are like the two main things that people, how they value a home. And you're like, that's missing a whole lot.
Let's talk about that for a second, because speaking of price per foot, so you are putting so much into these homes, and I don't know your market. I don't know Oklahoma City. I don't know Edmond, but I hear what you're saying, and I think that all of those things that you put in the house, we put in, and we are pushing the envelope, like compressing our margins basically as low as we're comfortable going, to still feel like we can, like it's worth the risk to take on these projects, but we'll compress those margins to build a higher quality product, and put it out there. But those kinds of systems that you're talking about are things that we can barely squeeze into homes that are selling for $1,100 a foot here in Austin. Now, $1,100 a foot, that's factoring in very high land costs here too. But what does the calculus look like? Like things that you feel comfortable publicly sharing, not too detailed, but like what's kind of generally the calculus in terms of what a really high quality premium house can sell for there? Like kind of, what sort of specs go into that, and I don't know, I'm just curious, that side of things.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's price per foot is so interesting because I mean, we recently built a 2,200 square foot wood frame house, we were in the 325 a foot for like build costs. That's not land or real realtor fees or anything like that.
We consider that hard costs.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But and that was including our builder fee and stuff. And that was we did upgrade, so we're still using zip sheathing there, but we are using mineral wool for insulation. We have a geothermal HVAC unit. We've got an ERV system installed. But we also had to make
geothermal.
Yeah, we use a lot of. I've used geothermal in almost all my houses. I love it. With the tax credit, it's basically the same price as a normal unit, and you don't have an exterior condenser, and so there's just no noise at all. And if you're building in an urban environment, it's really nice. Doesn't take up any space. Super efficient too.
Okay.
Really cool.
So
aluminum clad windows there, but then also like we could easily drop $600 a foot hard cost, like to do all the things. And so what I'm trying to learn how to do is here's kind of our, we're not going to, at some point, it's better just to have another builder do it because we just are in the quality side of things. So if we start going below, on that house, we did shingle roof and still, even though we usually do metal roofs and stuff. But I'm like, hey, do the shingle roof and save money because you can replace that in 20 years. Like make these decisions here. And we did VOC free paints in there and some things like that. A shower blower to kind of dry out the shower every time. So some upgrades like that. But I really want to start kind of we're working on a package is kind of like all these like upgrades and then also kind of the 80-20 of, hey, if you only have so much money, do these things right here. And then these you can always do later or whatever. But it's tough because things are expensive and
well, that sounds everything that you're piling into. You said 325 a foot. We're at like 500. We're probably 500 a foot on median cost, maybe even higher than that. Depends on the particular project up here. We got really expensive labor force in Austin, so that's one of the things that really drives it here. I imagine you're probably a little bit more reasonable there in Oklahoma, but
our nicer stuff is 500 a foot. Yeah. I mean,
really?
If you want to like kind of do what you want to do in a house, and I don't mean like putting a diamond chandelier, and I just mean kind of, I would say the full building culture product, you're going to be $500 a foot. Yeah, definitely.
But that's with your fee though.
That's probably, 5 to 6. I mean, it's hard to say what it is like, but I mean, we can easily hit 500 to 600 a foot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes you feel a little bit better.
Oh, yeah. 325 is us, like that is the low, like below that, that's when I say go use another builder. It's really doesn't make sense. But I also want to have a product that can help people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's just so few people. I think Austin, when I was in Austin not long ago, I was just going around, I'm like, oh, there's food trucks that advertise no seed oils. You don't see that in Oklahoma City yet. Like the health and wellness just hasn't made it mainstream in Oklahoma City. I don't mean no one cares about it, but I mean it's kind of not a thought. But there are some people, but it's not reflected in builders and stuff. So we get a lot of people reaching out, but their max price on a house is $500,000. I'm like, we just can't build a $500,000 house. I mean, it's not the business that we're set up for, and it's really hard to build.
You guys do customs also?
Yeah. That's what we've been doing lately. Actually, is some customs, and then working on some master planning, and then really working on this development.
Yeah. Okay. What sort of setup do you have for your team? Like how many, employees? What are their kind of general roles?
Yeah, we've got, let's see, is it 5? So we've got me, we've got full-time like director of architecture and construction. He's a licensed architect, and an equity partner. I brought him in as an equity partner a few years ago. And then we've got like an assistant PM and an administrative assistant, and full-time accountant, and then urban designer, and what else? Wait, I feel like I'm missing one. No, I think that's it. Oh, and another drafter, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Who's remote actually, but awesome. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And we'll be growing that, I think, over the coming years, and that's where it's interesting as we think about business and stuff. It's where do we want to grow? Like if we're doing design, construction, and development. And I'm kind of realizing development is what I can scale the most in terms of leveraging my time, and to try to like build all of those things we're developing probably wouldn't be possible. It would really limit to what we can develop, and then running a giant GC company is just not what I want to do. I want to run a smaller GC company that's really good at a few things. And
Yeah.
so we're kind of thinking like we'll probably have a smaller design department, a smaller GC department that's really good at a few things, some boutique commercial and some high-end townhomes and homes, and then development where if we're doing a larger development, we can partner with a GC, and bring someone in to and just we're doing the designer so we can still make sure it's the quality that we want and all that.
You have any ambitions to scale the company and these developments you're doing outside of Oklahoma City?
Actually, in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. So it's hard for us to like build somewhere else, like true, like for like GC somewhere else. That would be a long ways from now, I would think, because I mean, as you know, when you do quality construction, the amount of oversight it takes is a tremendous amount of just oversight and intention to really make that happen. So, and I'm not, yeah, I just know how hard that is, even when we
Oh, yeah.
are local, how to do it. So doing it in a new place is like, whoa. But development, I think, is really interesting. And I think that in a lot of ways, because urban design, architecture, development can translate very easily, kind of more remotely. And then also, I mean, ultimately, what I would really like to do, my ultimate kind of vision is to grow a fund. We're just doing an SPV right now, and SPVs for a while, just LLCs for a specific project, raise money for that project with those investors. But ultimately, want to raise a fund, not just for our own projects, though, yes, for our own projects where we can just go do more of these projects because we're getting good at getting things through entitlements and things like that, which are very hard on these infill stuff. And we're getting good at that. So it's like we can raise a fund to go do those, but then we can also fund other small developers really across the country, and whether that starts in Austin or somewhere closer by is what I would probably see, because a huge barrier to these better projects is capital. It's because institutional capital's not interested in funding these. They want to fund multifamily products, strip malls, and storage centers. You're in
Uh-huh.
industrial. You're not going to see them investing in more complex urban projects. They're just not, like, because it doesn't meet their investment criteria. And I get that. So you're really then relying on high net worth individuals. And then also, banks don't really like it because they just want commodities as well. So there's a lot of financial pressure towards these other things. And so I think there's a lot of builders, architects, even small developers across the country. Gosh, I could deploy $1 billion tomorrow to people that literally could build a great product if they had a little bit of support in certain areas where their weaknesses were, and then had the financing to go do it. Because as you know, syndicating and raising money takes a tremendous amount of time. I spent a lot of time doing it on this deal, which means I'm not doing other things, So I think it would be really, really interesting to raise a fund, and with some of the rule changes with the Reg D 506C that now allows you to announce publicly you're doing a raise. That's really cool, coupled with social media and having a microphone where you can kind of platform your values and what you're doing across the country without getting in trouble with the SEC. And then having social media. And then third, some of these platforms like Juniper Square or Appfolio softwares where you can manage investors as a small company. You don't need some giant team of people. Just as an individual, our investors have a portal, and I can drag and drop their K1s in, and it goes to their account, and I can say I'm going to distribute $200,000, and it goes to their account with a click of a button through ACH. That is only not that old, like 5 years old or something like that, where these softwares are becoming attainable for small businesses. So I think there's really tremendous potential, and we really need to be funding other small developers. Because I mean, you're talking about doing. I would like to hear more about what you're syndicating, but that's my ultimate vision. I think is to be able to do a fund, build locally, but have a fund and invest and partner with others elsewhere.
Yeah. And would that fund have a focus on projects that are also kind of producing a social good, kind of like your
Absolutely.
project?
Yeah, I mean, it would really be small development that we believe is making the communities better and also meeting certain return metrics. These are investments. It's not like this is not a nonprofit or something. And I think the responsibility of having to generate a profit is good, but also when you start taking that longer term, I do think about it like it would be a long term mindset still of let's invest in places that are, walkable, growing, and those places over time are going to do better and better. And so like let's hold that long term. Let's invest and not let other people just benefit. Let's if we're gonna build projects, let's keep building more projects in that little area, and then all the projects benefit from that happening.
Yeah. I think that you're onto something really important, honestly, because there needs to be intentional capital for these developers that are trying to do something good for society, but also, yeah, obviously there does have to be the profit component. to incentivize the investment. You know, for us, we syndicate all of our deals, and we'll syndicate them into single asset entities. So we've got at any given time, say 12 active homes that we're developing. And so we'll have, you know, those LLCs that are active, and each one has a different mix of investors.
That's cool.
And, you know, we've got wonderful investors we've built over the years. Pitch is largely IRR driven, you know, and that's just the nature of it. I do think that there's a model where you can attract investors over a really long horizon, and it might be a different mix. Maybe it's not as much, but there is something to be said for pitching someone and for investing in this idea of investing in, developing, and holding a portfolio of iconic properties over many years. And that, I think, sounds like that's kind of what you're trying to do. And I haven't seen anything like it. I think it's challenging because it's a lot easier to go get the quick money, right?
It
The
is.
quick catch. But if you can do it, and I know there are people out there that I think would be all over it, then you truly are. That's just an elevated investment model and an elevated development model. Like all the way around, I just think that's a win.
Man, I think you articulated that really well. And I mean, it is aspirational and it is difficult, but I do believe also these people are out there. I actually think there are a lot of them out there. And I know because I'm having conversations with them, you know, and
Yeah.
it's newer to kind of this whole pitch where all of it's kind of fallen into place where I'm like, I've started to understand like the real thesis and how to think about it and talk about it and structure it, even like all those pieces together. But there's a lot of people out there like that have never done a real estate syndication before, right? They invest in, you know, doctors, lawyers, or something. They might throw stuff in their 401k in the stock market and maybe a REIT somewhere, but they've never done like a private real estate deal. And if you can communicate with them and then also make it easy where they don't have to like
Yeah.
get paper checks or blah, blah. It's just like, hey, it's kind of like you got an E-Trade account or something. It's really simple. We'll give you an update every quarter, you know, and then you do build this portfolio of iconic stuff that you can be really proud of. You can visit if it's in your own town. You've just helped build. That's, I think, really powerful, real estate in your own town too,
Yeah.
because people want to help build their own communities.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something that if you're investing in your own town, you can drive by it. It is a lot more exciting to see it unfold
It is
versus
like I'm an owner in that. I helped build that.
versus investing in Pepsi or Coca-Cola or
Yeah,
whatever.
and I think there really needs to be a change in the way we think about capital and wealthy people in the US. You know, it's like wealthy people have just gotten such a bad rap in the US, like where it's just like people like to hate on people because they're wealthy. And I don't mean that's across the board, but there is a lot of that kind of thinking now. And what we really need is I think it's wonderful that there are wealthy people, and I want wealthy people to be making more money, but also investing. Not, you know, there's kind of this mindset of let me like make as much money as I can over here as possible, and then also give away the money to 501c3s over here, which I think is pretty odd because they're almost $500 billion is given away to 501c or nonprofits in the US alone annually. That's $500 billion. And I'm kind of going, these are two real extremes. And I think there's a lot of people, the idea of like patronage even, and patronage is not like a giveaway. You know, people would support artists historically. The Medicis in Florence were bankers, you know, and they helped build Florence. And I don't mean they did it altruistically entirely, but like there was altruism plus smart, shrewd business because they built Florence into this amazing place that also made them more money. And when you invest in an artist, that artist actually reflects back on, you know, kind of you. And so I just think people with capital, wealthy people, are incredibly important to advancing society, whether that's new businesses, new technologies, risking money on ideas that might not work out, but then, you know, change the world, or building better communities and better cities. And I think I'd really like to see that kind of narrative shift some.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting perspective and an interesting way to look at it. I think that you know, you can really marry that philanthropic aspect of what you're doing with the capitalistic component, which is kind of, you know, a win-win for
Yeah.
everybody. Of your investors that you approach, like how many of them are investing off of financial motivation versus how many are investing off of an excitement around your vision for the world and what you're doing?
I would say it's almost always both, because I don't think anyone's in it just for the money, but also they are thinking about it as an investment. And so they're going like, okay, I believe in your product and your vision and the trajectory of Oklahoma City and stuff like that. But then there's local people that are like, I want to be part of building the city. And so there is this kind of like inspirational aspect to it. And then even people that have invested kind of nationally where they're not in Oklahoma City, it's people that have watched building culture or kind of see it and go, I just want to see a better world be built, and I just love being able to support this, and I would love to be able to own a piece of this long term too. So I'd say it's largely both.
Yeah. Are there any coalitions of like builders and developers that have this kind of shared mindset that you have, that get together and kind of help try to plan out
Man, that's a
a
good.
better world?
There's so many groups out there, and I feel like I don't quite fit into any one of them perfectly, even though I really enjoy a lot of them. A lot of them do amazing work and advance the vision. But I think there are some people rallying around this idea. And I mean, the new urbanists have been out there for a long time. That's largely like planners and things like that have been advancing the cause of kind of more human centric cities and neighborhoods and going, fighting the policy fight. Like the reason Texas is changing their legislation and stuff is largely because of the work these people done and the YIMBY movement and stuff like that. But I think capital is kind of the next thing that needs to happen is people that know how to marry these ideas with capital. And that's what's been lacking. You got people that are really good at capital, and you got people really good at design, and you need someone that can do both. And I by no means mean I'm the only person that can do that, but there aren't a whole lot at the same time that are thinking about that. But I think it's also a growing movement. And there's the National Town Builders Association, Incremental Development Alliance. So there are definitely like a group of people out there that I find I'm inspired by, learn from, but not like a core group that I'm a part of right now.
Yeah. I'm impressed by obviously your journey and what you've learned along the way. I can see kind of now that I know you're a fan of, Christopher Alexander, I can see kind of where you got it from. And I agree. Look, there are things that I think there are a lot of people out there that, would actually build and develop to a higher standard if they could, if it was commercially feasible. And there are just these barriers and ceilings that are incumbent upon us right now that are unfortunately in the way and need to go. You mentioned one earlier, which are appraisals. That's one of the things that I think is one of the most deficient like methodologies that I've ever seen, really, in terms of, and it creates, that might be one of the lead dominoes that needs to fall.
I agree.
Because if that could fall, then a lot of other problems get kind of automatically solved. Not all of them, but a lot. And I don't even know how that shell gets cracked.
I don't have a solution for that one either, but I'm like, that it has to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, if you can somehow, like, for instance, one of the things that I think is so silly here is appraisals will take ADUs, and they just put a artificially low, like they're capped at the value that they can assign to an ADU on a property, which then completely inhibits the incentive and the motivation to go build more of these.
Why would you build an ADU?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you get the financing to build an ADU?
And it's not even aligned. It's not even aligned with market methodology. Like,
right.
So realtors and buyers who are actually setting the prices don't even value it that way.
No.
So it's just a complete misalignment. But I mean, that's just one of a handful of issues that I see with the whole appraisal process. So, I think that if that domino can fall at some point, then, does a lot of the heavy lifting for us in terms of making progress towards being able to build higher quality buildings.
I am with you 100%.
Well, we probably need to wrap this up. I know we both got kids we need to get back to. Since we started talking about this, I actually just want to circle back to one thing here, because we got a lot of listeners that, build spec, and of course the the question always is, well, how do I connect with investors and capital and all that? And I think you're really successful at it. I've been at it for a while. So I just love to have that conversation with you. Like, I mean, you built a great platform on, I still can't call it X. I have to call it Twitter.
Yeah.
So you've built a great platform there. Is that like a big lever point for you in terms of how you've found investors, or is it just personal networking out in your neighborhoods and community? Or
Honestly,
like,
X and LinkedIn, and mainly X, have been,
yeah,
I've barely been on LinkedIn, I guess. I need to be on it more, but like X has been amazing because I've only been on there, like my personal account, since 2023.
okay,
So coming up on 2 years, and just what a surprise of who all is on there and what interesting people and the people you can follow in business. I mean, I'm amazed at how many connections I made and how many people I've met in real life that are serious people doing really cool stuff. And not that many of them have invested, but at the same time, it is a platform. So like what I would encourage people to do is be on there and be putting out what you're doing, be putting out your values, looking at other people, going to things in real life that you come across. You start kind of finding the retweet and like all the people that are in the real estate part of Twitter that are super sophisticated. These are not like influencers or something for influence. These are really cool, interesting, authentic people doing work and just kind of building in public. And you can learn a ton, find resource. But I really think it takes putting yourself out there, which is extremely uncomfortable. Well, for most people, and for me, even, not even, like, it was very uncomfortable to start posting, but then even to start like announcing a raise felt like horrific at first. But then you realize, the more authentic you can be, the better. It's like you're not trying to do it for a sales pitch. I'm not on there because I'm trying to raise money. And I do make posts saying, hey, I'm doing this, and I'm just like, DM me if you want the deck. And then I send them the deck. And if they just wanted to see the deck and have no interest in investing, I don't care. Like,
yeah,
that's fine. And sometimes I just get on phone calls. People are interested. They're not interested in investing. So I've just been able to make a lot of connections. What's so cool about X is it really has this public square element to it. And people talk about how much trash is on there. And I'm like, I mean, I guess so. But I find a lot of super valuable stuff. So I don't know who you're following or what you're looking at. But like, I find some really cool, valuable insights and connections. I literally had a phone call today with someone off of X who was way more successful than me, just because we'd kind of been following each other for a little bit. I had a 45-minute or 30-minute phone call today. Super cool. So I think you have to put yourself out there. I mean, if you are going to raise money, make sure to do the 506c, or you will.
yeah.
But that, and curate. Yeah, I think that's probably and curate an investor news email list, which I've started doing, but a lot of it just turns into personal relationships that you can, email specifically about things. And I'm new on this journey, so I'm by no means an expert. I'm just telling you what I have learned to date.
Yeah. Well, I had a conversation with Matt Reisinger a few years ago on
did
this
you?
podcast, and I asked him something along those lines in terms of like kind of how to build your presence. And obviously he doesn't deal with investors, they just do straight custom. But I mean, he was just talking about really the power of, like, I mean, YouTube, that's where he's big, is one of the biggest search engines on the planet, I guess second behind Google, although that's probably not changing with all the different LLMs. But I think you're right, like putting yourself out there, and you talk to a guy like Reisinger, and he would second that. You put yourself out there consistently and over a long enough period of time, you're going to develop some great credibility, relationships. That's going to benefit you across every aspect of your business, not just investors. If you're looking for investors, the one piece of advice that I can probably add to the conversation that's not kind of the typical plain vanilla advice you get when it comes to investors, it's it's past clients. Like, we're all building fairly, nice homes, fairly nice to very, very nice. And so the clientele, the people that are buying those homes, are most likely going to be accredited investors.
Yeah.
And so build them a really good house and take really good care of them.
Yeah.
And if they're really thrilled with everything that you've delivered for them, there's a good chance, like, that just kind of happens for us. We'll have people coming to us. We don't even have to knock on their door.
That's super cool.
They know what we do, and
right.
so they come.
Yeah, you're
to
playing the long game with not only like building quality houses, but like you said, taking care of people, and that that rarely ever like pays off in the moment per se, but I think in the long run, and you obviously play the long game, you know, I think anyone that runs a quality business and cares about quality is playing the long game, because you even talked about compressing your margins just to be able to build something, you know, and I really believe that for us, that if you treat people well, if you know, and that doesn't mean everyone's happy all of the time or something, but like we really try to do the right thing at every turn, and we make mistakes, but we try to make it right. We try to be honest and open about our mistakes and authentic. And I think in the long run, like you said, you'll build an audience and a tribe of people that you do have some real credibility and trust and authority, you know, in some ways. And then I think the possibilities get really exciting from there. So yeah.
Well, I'm with you on that. Let's wrap with where we can connect with you.
Yeah, so you can connect with me on X, Austin Tunnell, Austin, Tunnell, Tunnell. So it's like tunnel with an extra L. That's probably, and then I'm on LinkedIn too. You can go to my website, buildingculture.com, and that's our building design website. And we are still raising for Townsend. We've got 3.85 million out of 5 million. So if you're interested, you can email me at austin@buildingculture.com. And, but X is probably where I just actually post my thoughts and stuff like that.
Yeah, you got a good account. I made a
bunch of people mad yesterday with a post about incandescent bulbs. 50% of people think I'm a complete idiot. And then the other 50% are like, yeah.
What did you say about incandescents? Now I got to know.
I just said something like prediction over the I think over the next decade, incandescent bulbs will make a big comeback. Andrew Huberman's posting about them and even talking about just it's the processed food. LEDs are the processed food of lighting, and then anyway,
from a wellness and health standpoint, 100%.
I'd love to talk to you more, because you started off by saying something about lighting, so we'll have to talk again.
Yeah, I've got incandescents at my house. I had to pull out the LEDs. I had to pull out the LEDs after I got my CO and went in and threw in the incandescents. So
that's awesome. I've got incandescents right here.
Yeah, too. Nice. All right, man. Well, great visiting. I hope I can make it out to Oklahoma City sometime and come check out what y'all are doing in person, because it sounds pretty incredible.
I will definitely reach out. You know, I don't go into Austin too much, but usually like probably once a year I do go. So I will love to meet up.
Yeah, good, man. Well, let's do it.